Hi, I'm Lisa. First of all, I want you to know that you are not alone. If you have a baby right now that doesn't fall asleep independently, that needs to be rocked, fed, shushed, driven around in the car, have a pacifier in order to fall asleep. If your little one seems to fight sleeps and nap time, like I said, you are not alone. But when it comes to sleep training, it's probably one of the most controversial subjects among parents. But it's important to know that you can help your little one to get better sleep. When I had my son, I didn't read any books before he was born. I kind of figured as long as he has food and love, that's all he needs. And they do need that, but they also need sleep. And this was something I didn't realize before I had my son. I just thought they would sleep when they needed to. I was quite shocked that they don't just seem to sleep. They seem to fight sleep even though they're exhausted. And then I started to feel overwhelmed. I think I felt, what can I do to help my son get a good night's sleep? How can I help him? I almost felt helpless. I was tired, in fact, exhausted. And yet here I had this baby that I just couldn't help. So I started searching so many different methods. If I think about the crazy things I tried, now I can laugh. But then it was no laughing matter, right? I would sometimes sit next to his cot just with my hand on him because I'd read that weight will help. I used to sit holding the pacifier in his mouth until he fell asleep, and then almost like roll a ninja crawl out of the room so that I didn't wake him up. That dreaded feeling when you've just got them to sleep and you start to put them down and those little eyes look at you, and you have to start this whole process all over again. So if you can relate to any of this, I completely understand how you're feeling right now because I've been there myself. So when I was starting to look for sleep training for my son, finding a method that I was comfortable with was so important, and finding a method that I thought would be right for my son too. So what I want to do today is kind of talk to you about sleep training methods and what are the different methods that you can choose from, because there isn't just one type of sleep training. Now, you might have heard lots of words bandied around, cry it out and Ferber and all of these things, and you're kind of wondering, well, what sleep training methods should I choose? So I want to talk about that. But first, I want to just cover off a few things. So when you think about, a lot of parents say, when can I expect my baby to sleep through the night? Now, in those newborn weeks, up to 3 months, really your baby doesn't. They just sleep haphazardly. They only sleep for short periods, 2 to 4 hours at a time. When they start getting between 3 and 6 months, some babies do start to go for longer stretches. And then you'll hear parents say, my baby sleeps through the night. Most times this is probably around 6 or 8 hours in a continuous stretch at that age. But from 6 months onwards, that's when you really should see your baby consolidating their sleep into a good 10 to 12 hours at night. Now, when we talk about sleep training, people say, what age can I sleep train? Now, the general consensus is somewhere between the ages of 4 and 6 months is an ideal time to start sleep training. However, it's never too early to start creating good sleep habits with your little one, and it is never too late to sleep train. It just means that you're probably going to have to choose a different method if your baby is older or you've got a young child that's 1 or 18 months, etc. And when we go through the sleep training methods, you'll kind of get a feel for which method is going to be right for you based on where you are now and where your little one is. And then lastly, before we talk about the sleep training methods, I want to talk about mom guilt. Mom guilt is terrible. As moms, we always just feel guilty that we're not helping them, and then when we are helping them, guilty. Are we somehow psychologically damaging our child from sleep training? And those people that are against sleep training will say that, we are by sleep training them. But I want you to know that yes, there might be some crying with sleep training, and there are methods that you can choose that have very little to no crying and are very, very gentle. But any kind of sleep training is going to result in some crying from your little one. Now, that's not because they're feeling abandoned. That's because they're protesting the changes you're making. Think about it. Your baby can't talk. When they get to toddler stage and they're not happy with something, they throw a tantrum. They yell, they scream. They can talk, they can verbalize. But when your baby's small and they're not happy about something that you're changing, the only way they can express that is through crying. So when your little one does cry, no matter even if it's only for a couple of minutes, just know it's not because they're feeling abandoned. It's because they are protesting the changes that you're making. But consistency is key, and honestly, within a few nights, you will see a huge difference in your little one. So there are 5 different sleep training methods, and these go from the gentlest to the least gentle, and I'm going to start with the gentlest. So the most gentle form of sleep training is pick up and put down. Now, this type of sleep training is probably more suited to babies younger than 6 months of age, because what this method involves is putting your baby down while they're drowsy but awake, and if your baby cries, picking them up, comforting them. Once they stop crying, putting them back down. And you keep doing this until they eventually fall asleep. Now, as you can imagine, that does take a lot of time as a parent, a lot of discipline and a commitment. And if your baby's older than 6 months, you're likely to get a lot of protesting from the constant picking up and putting down. But if you've got a baby under 6 months, that is something that you could consider, and it basically has no crying, because the moment your little one cries or fusses, you pick them up, you comfort them, and then you put them down. So that's the most gentle. Then we go on to fading, also known as faded out, and this is probably the second most gentle form of sleep training. Now, what this involves is you continue to do what you've always done to put your little one to sleep, but you do less of it each night. So, as an example, if you currently rock your baby to sleep, you will continue to rock them, but this time don't rock them quite so long, and then put them down. Next night, you rock them for even less, or after a few nights, should I say, you rock them even less, and then you put them down. So gradually you're fading out whatever you're doing now to get your baby to sleep until eventually you're no longer doing it. And that is really what the faded out or fading method involves. The next method is called the chair method. So with this method, what it means is that as a parent, you put your little one down to sleep, drowsy but awake, and you sit next to them, either you or your partner sit next to them in a chair next to the cot. And whenever they cry, without really a lot of touch, you more just offer comfort. Maybe a gentle pat, but it's more comforting, verbal comforting, saying some shushing, it's okay, but you're there. Every time they fuss, you kind of comfort them again, reiterate with some comforting, soothing words. And then what you do is, after a few nights, you move your chair a little bit further away from the cot. A few more nights, a little bit further away from the cot, until you're eventually out of the room. Now again, it requires a lot of discipline from parents or because you've got to sit next to them. And also some older babies do get worked up because they see you sitting there and they think, why are you not picking me up? And some babies can get worked up. And this is why it's important to know your own baby and your baby's temperament when you're picking a method that's right for you. The fourth method, and probably one of the most popular methods, is controlled crying. Now you might hear of this called the check and console method, the Ferber method, graduated extinction. It's all under that same, it's just different names for the same method. And basically what this method involves is putting your baby down, drowsy but awake, leaving them. If they cry, waiting a few minutes before you go to them. When you go to them, without picking them up, you just comfort them. So that might be a gentle rub, a little bit of shushing or gentle pat or some soothing words. Once they've calmed down, you leave. And then you wait again. If they start crying, you wait a few minutes. So you might start out by waiting 2 or 3 minutes, And then if the next time you extend it, so you wait 5 minutes. Put them, go in, repeat, next time wait 7 minutes as an example. So you basically, it's controlled. Generally you won't go past 10 or 15 minutes. So once you get to 10 or 15 minutes, if your baby's crying, you hold it at that 10 or 15 minutes for each check-in. And then the last method, which is probably one of the most controversial, is the quiet out method, also known as extinction. Now, obviously, some parents just can't cope with hearing their child cry, because with this method, really, you put your baby down, and most supporters of this method say don't go in at all while until your baby basically falls asleep. So they cry and they eventually fall asleep. Now, that might sound harsh to some parents, but the parents who have done it basically say there's no more crying, because no more crying time, should I say. So think about it. If you do control crying, they might cry for a week before they don't cry. With quiet out, they might only cry for 2-3 nights and then they're done and they're kind of sleeping. So the overall crying, people who do controlled quiet out say is actually less. So those are the five methods, sleep training methods. Now, for me personally, I couldn't do quiet out. That's not to say that it's not a viable option. Of course, it definitely is. But when I was researching, I decided that I was going to choose a method that, yes, it had some crying, but it wasn't a quiet out. And like I said, I did lots of research when I was looking for a sleep training method. And eventually I came across a program that I used. And the reason I chose this particular program is because it covered sort of 3 of the 5 methods. It talked about fading, the chair method, as well as controlled crying. And it really allowed me to customize the plan for my own child and my own circumstances, which is what I loved about the program. And I used that program, and within 2 weeks I had my son sleeping through the night. So if you'd like to know more about the program that I use to successfully sleep train my son, then just click on the links below and find out more about this program. Like I said, choosing the right method is really a personal choice. So take time to think about which method is right for you and your little one. And in saying that, like I said, the program that I chose actually covers 3 of those 5 methods. So it really gives you lots of flexibility to be able to choose the method that is right for you and your little one. Good luck with your sleep training. I know that it can be challenging in the beginning, and those first few nights it does require consistency, but you will get there in the end. And once your baby's sleeping through the night, your baby's happier, you are happier, and generally the whole family ends up being happier. So good luck. Till next time. Bye.